The case of Troy Triplett versus the Commonwealth of Kentucky before the Kentucky Appellate Court will now come to order. The final opinion will be handed down by the court on January 18, 1938. Will the court agree to the sentence handed down by a jury in the Letcher County Court, or will it hand down a different verdict in the case? Come along with us as we take a look at the Triplett case. There are no public pictures of the people who are spoken of in this story. So, we have placed known pictures of Letcher County Court House, the Kentucky Appellate Court, and general pictures to help us tell this story. All aboard the Kentucky-Tennessee Living Time Machine as we depart and continue the story of Troy Triplett and Dolph Hall. Please fasten your seatbelts and keep your arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. But to get going, we need your help. We still need to fire up that time machine to transport us. Please help us by clicking on the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons down below. Not only does this fire up the time machine for our flight back in time, but it convinces the YouTube algorithm that we need a bigger vehicle to reach more people who love history as much as you do. Now, back to our story. Troy Triplett pleads for life. While the trials for the murders of Mose Webb and Dolph Hall is not on public record, we do have the case that was taken to the Kentucky Appellate Court. Most of the evidence of the jury case will be explained during the Kentucky Appellate Court case named Triplett v. Commonwealth, which the final decision was handed down on January 18, 1938. Appearing for the appellant, or Troy Triplett, was John D.W. Collins. Appearing for the appellee, or the Commonwealth of Kentucky, were Hubert Meredith, Attorney General, and W. Owen Keller, Assistant Attorney General. The opinion of the court was given by Judge William H. Rees. According to the court documents, these are the charges levied against Troy Triplett. Quote, appellant shot and killed Dolph Hall in Letcher County, July 16, 1937. Hall was 13 years of age. When the appellant was arraigned, he entered a plea of not guilty. But when the case was called for trial, he withdrew this plea and entered a plea of guilty to the indictment, charging him with the crime of murder, thus leaving the jury only the duty of fixing his punishment at life imprisonment or death. The Commonwealth, as it had a right to do, introduced evidence showing the circumstances attending the killing in order to enable the jury to fix the punishment intelligently. Unquote. The judgment of the admitted crime of murder led to Troy Triplett being sentenced to the death penalty. Triplett sought the reversal of these grounds, stating two reasons. One, that the punishment of death was excessive to the crime, and two, that the court allowed the prosecution in the case to admit evidence after they had closed their case and after the defendant had testified. The defendant felt that the sentence should have stood on the evidence that had been tried alone. The testimony of John Henry Addington. We usually break apart testimonies in these cases. However, we felt that the testimonies of John Henry Addington and Paul Akeman should stand on their own merit. It will be read exactly as entered into the court document, and each should be viewed as one quote. Quote, John Henry Addington, the first witness introduced by the Commonwealth, testified that on the day of the homicide, he, Dolphy Hall, and Paul Akeman crossed the mountain to pick huckleberries, but found that the berries were not ripe, and returned to the foot of the mountain, where they were joined by Troy Triplett, Homer Rose, and Harrison Spurgeon. Triplett was angry because the Hall boy had testified against him in some court proceeding, and, in the presence of the witness, said in substance that he was going to kill Hall. Triplett, Hall, and the others walked down the road to a point where the path led across the hill. Hall, Addington, and Akeman turned into the path, and Triplett ran up to them and said, quote, you're going down the road, unquote. They turned and accompanied Triplett and Rose to Brack Quillen's home, where Addington and Akeman turned and started back. Triplett again ran up to them and said, quote, you're going with us, unquote. They continued down the road to the mouth of Webb Branch, and then to the home of Arlie Vanover. Addington told Triplett he wanted a drink of water, and Triplett said that he would go into the house and get it. While he was absent, Dolphy Hall walked into the house, but Triplett took a hold of his arm and led him back to the road. When Triplett gave the water to Addington, he said, quote, "Take a good cold drink. That is all you will need until you get one in hell," unquote. They continued down the road, appellant complaining all the while because Dolphy Hall had testified against him. He threatened several times to kill the Hall boy. Addington testified as follows concerning what Triplett said and did when they reached the place where the killing took place. Quote, he said, quote, "Damn him, I'm going to bump him off," unquote. And I begged him up there before we started not to bother him, not to hurt him. And we come on down there a little farther, and he said that he didn't aim to leave no evidence. And I says to him, quote, "You wouldn't hurt that little harmless boy, would you?" unquote. He said, quote, "How old are you, son?" And I said, quote, "I'm 13, unquote. And he turned around to me and said, quote, "I was in the pen by the time I was as big as he is," unquote. And he said, quote, "I don't aim to leave any evidence, him, nor none of you," unquote. We got on down to the mouth of the branch, and he kindly showed Dolphy how to sit down. There was a little bank there, just a small bank, and Dolphy sat down and placed his face down in his hands, and he says, quote, "Let's talk some," unquote. Troy did, and just as he said that, he commenced backing backwards and pulling his gun, and I commenced backing away up the road. I backed up the road. I backed up 2 or 3 steps while he was that way. That throwed us some little distance apart. Well, quote, the court. Who was it that drew the gun and backed up? Answer, Triplett, Troy Triplett. Then he drew his gun and shot the way the little boy was riding the mule. The first shot and the mule then wheeled and made a circle around. It hit the mule, and as she came around, she knocked me over against the plank fence kindly, about 6 feet, and he shot one more shot in the ground under me as I fell, or about the time I fell. And then he went right back by the back of Dolphy Hall and shot into him 3 shots in his side, next to him in the right side. And then by that time I got up, there where the fence was, and took up through on my hands and feet, where I hurt my leg, and he was shot. About the time he loaded his gun up, he was working the gun about the time I started, and then he was shot. There around about the same place, 6 more shots. Troy told him to sit down and motioned to him, and then he sat down on the little bank, and when he sat down he put his hands down that way, and his head was something like this, and saying something. I don't know what it was, and he never did raise up no more that I seen of, unquote. The testimonies of Paul Akeman and Jesse Holbrook. Paul Akeman, a boy of 13 years of age, testified to substantially the same facts, except he did not see the whole transaction, as he ran when the first shot was fired. The only other witness introduced by the Commonwealth was Jesse Holbrook. He reached the scene of the killing about 30 minutes after it occurred and found the mule laying in the road and Dolphy Hall on the bank by the side of the road, dead. Holbrook described the conditions he found as follows. Quote, the embankment was about that high above the road, indicating, and looked as if he had hunkered down just like this, about in that position, indicating. And he was shot through the head and through into the arm. The arm was still under his head, and there was 5 more shots down his back, as if he was shot right down that way, unquote. Both of the testimonies of Holbrook and Akeman seem to match the testimony of Addington. Akeman was at the scene when the crime began, and Holbrook came up on the scene after the dust had cleared. Will their testimonies be allowed to stand, or will the court decide to throw them out as evidence not essential to the case? In next week's video, We will continue with the evidence of the two reasons given as to why the court should render a favorable verdict for Troy Triplett. Thank you. Kentucky Tennessee Living would like to thank you for watching our video series on the story of Troy Triplett, the bad man of Letcher County. Don't forget to hit that like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification button. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky Tennessee Living as we are discovering the mysteries in Appalachian history.